When she first said yes, I really thought I'd won the lottery. We'd been together 3 years. I knew everything about her, how she liked her coffee, how she cried at nature documentaries, how she could spend hours talking about leaf structures like it was the most fascinating thing in the world. My name's Evan. I'm 28 years old. I live in Missoula, Montana, and I've been a paramedic for 6 years. It's not glamorous, but it means something. Saving lives, keeping calm when everything's falling apart, that's always been my thing. Carly and I got engaged on a quiet Wednesday night in April. No big show. Just a walk through the pine trails behind the lake where we had our first real talk. I knelt in the dirt with a ring I'd been carrying in my jacket for 3 months. She laughed and said yes before I even finished the question. Everything felt right in that moment. But that was the last time I remember her acting like the woman I'd fallen in love with. The next morning she already had a vision board taped to the fridge. Hand-drawn arrows, magazine clippings, color schemes. She called it the journey to harmony. I called it a bit much. The commitment ceremony wasn't going to be traditional. No tuxes or chapels. Carly said she wanted a soul-centered nature union. Something meaningful. Honestly, that sounded great to me. Something outside with our closest friends, maybe a small hike, a bonfire. Easy. But Carly had other ideas. She started organizing a 3-day wilderness retreat like it was the damn Olympics. Daily mindful awakening sessions, vegan-only meals, color-coded packing lists for the guests. She booked a speaker from Arizona named Sagafire to do energy readings on the first night. She even hired a drone guy. A drone guy. Is this what you want? I asked her one night as she stood at the kitchen counter obsessing over the seating circle formation. I mean, it's kind of getting complicated. She didn't look up from her notebook. This isn't just for us, she said. It's about building community. Healing the past. Inviting everyone who shaped us. Even the hard ones. The hard ones? You know. People who pushed you. Made you grow. I had a bad feeling about that. And I should have trusted it. When the guest list started forming, I recognized names I hadn't heard in a decade. Guys I'd fallen out with. People who'd ghosted me. Then, out of nowhere, she mentioned inviting my old high school mentor who I'd cut ties with after he made a cruel joke about one of my patients. She said he had a grounding energy. Carly, I said, trying to stay calm, I don't want to see him again. That guy said some unforgivable stuff. She gave me a serene smile. Which is exactly why he should be there. Forgiveness starts with exposure. It wasn't just the guest list. She was redoing every decision I made. The hike route I'd suggested? Too masculine in energy. The song I liked for our vow exchange? She said it lacked depth. She replaced it with a recording of a waterfall from some sound healing podcast. I tried bringing it up again a week later. Told her I was feeling steamrolled. She hugged me and said, it's just your ego flaring up because this is new territory. I stopped arguing after that. Maybe I was just being sensitive. Maybe she was right and this was all about some deeper growth I wasn't tapped into. So I let it go. I let all of it go, telling myself she'd ease up once the ceremony passed. She was just overwhelmed. Planning made her anxious. It was temporary. Then one night, my buddy Caleb, who actually introduced me to Carly, called me out of the blue. Hey man, he said after some awkward small talk. Can I be real with you? Yeah. What's up? She's always been like this. Controlling. I just didn't want to say anything because I thought she'd mellow out with you. I didn't say anything at first. My jaw just kind of locked up. I mean, Caleb went on, she used to go through my phone when we were just friends. Took over our hiking group for a whole year. She's intense, man. And now it seems like no one's allowed to say no to her. That hit harder than I wanted to admit. Because deep down, I knew he was right. And still, I didn't stop her. I didn't cancel the retreat. I didn't push back when she sent out another round of invites, one of which included someone I hadn't spoken to since I was 18. Someone I once considered family and then swore I'd never see again. She said we needed to heal that wound. But the only thing I felt was dread. It was a Thursday night, maybe 2 weeks before the ceremony, and we were sitting at the dining table going over logistics. Well, Carly was going over logistics. I was mostly pretending to listen while my eyes drifted toward the TV in the next room where the weather guy was talking about thunderstorms rolling in from Idaho. Just a sprinkle, Carly said, not even glancing up. Rain is cleansing. We'll adapt. She shuffled through the hand-labeled folders she'd made for each experience leader, then slid a new guest list across the table. I added a few more names, she said casually. Tell me if there's anyone you strongly object to. I picked up the list. Most of it looked the same, friends, a few old coworkers, her yoga mentor, some people from a wilderness forum she was part of. But halfway down the page, my fingers froze. There it was. Gavin Taylor. I felt my throat close up. It was like seeing a ghost typed in 12-point Helvetica. No, I said immediately, my voice coming out sharper than I meant. Absolutely not. Carly, this guy is not coming. She blinked. Why? I thought you two were close once. Your mom said he used to live with your family. Yeah. That ended a long time ago. And not on good terms. She sat back, arms crossed. Okay, but can you tell me why? Because from what I heard, it sounded like there was some kind of falling out that never got addressed. I stared at her. You're not hearing me. I don't want him there. She sighed. Evan, this whole ceremony is about healing. Closing circles. Don't you think maybe this is a sign to it? No, I said again. Louder. Firmer. Do not invite him. I'm serious. Carly looked hurt, like I'd just insulted her directly. But I didn't care. Not this time. That name took me straight back to the darkest time in my life. Gavin Taylor wasn't just some kid I grew up with. He was my foster brother. My parents took him in when I was 15 and he was 14, right after his dad died in a fire, and his mom, well, nobody really knew where she went. He came in wearing hand-me-down clothes and didn't talk for a week. I shared my room with him. Taught him how to ride a bike. He even used to call my mom Ma. To everyone else, we looked like brothers. But behind the closed door of that bedroom, it was different. Gavin was never cruel in a way you could name. Just competitive. Everything I did, he had to do better. If I brought home a B+, he'd grind out an A. If I joined a sports team, he'd join too, and somehow always end up with more praise, more attention, more everything. But the worst part wasn't the jealousy. It was how he wore kindness like a costume. Around others, he was golden. Charismatic. People loved him. Especially my parents. But when no one else was looking, he'd find ways to cut me down. Steal my homework. Lie to teachers and say I skipped practice. He even told a girl I liked that I said she had bad skin. She cried in front of everyone and I never lived it down. I kept quiet because I didn't want to cause problems. My mom loved him. I figured maybe it would pass. It didn't. The final straw was during a regional rescue competition in high school. It's this big thing out here: junior responders, fire cadets, EMS students, we all train for months and compete. I was on track to place in the top 3. It meant scholarships, internships, real opportunities. We were teamed up for the simulation, a timed triage in the woods with actors playing injured victims. Gavin was assigned to assist. And halfway through, I noticed one of the patients had been logged incorrectly. Gavin had swapped the tags, making it look like I missed a critical injury. We were disqualified. My leg got torn up in the scramble too when I tripped over a staged debris trap that he swore he didn't touch. I still remember the look on his face when they read the score. Blank. Not even guilty. Just satisfied. I found out later he'd sabotaged it. One of the other kids overheard him bragging. My parents begged me not to press charges when I threatened to. Said he'd been through too much. That we were the only family he had left. So I didn't. But I made one decision that day: I'd never speak to Gavin Taylor again. And now Carly wanted to invite him into the circle. I looked at her across the table and saw that same stubborn determination she always wore when she thought she was doing something noble. I said no, I repeated. And I mean it. He is not part of my life and I don't want him there. Carly didn't answer right away. Just nodded slowly and said, okay, if that's how you feel. But something about her tone made my skin crawl. Because it wasn't acceptance. It was quiet calculation. And I knew deep in my bones that this wasn't over. The morning of the ceremony started like a dream. We'd driven out the night before with a small group: Carly, a couple of her friends, and my best friend Caleb, to help set up early. The clearing was gorgeous. Wide open space tucked deep in Flathead National Forest with pine trees tall enough to silence the wind. Carly had picked it months ago, called it a sacred container for transformation. I just thought it had decent cell service and didn't reek of mosquitoes. Guests arrived throughout the morning, unloading gear and hugging like long-lost relatives. Carly had asked everyone to dress in earth tones that match your soul, whatever that meant. So there was a lot of linen. A lot of sandals. One guy wore a poncho made of alpaca fur. I stood near the circle of camp chairs watching everyone mingle. Smiling when people nodded my way. Answering the same questions again and again. How do you feel? Ready for this? You must be so proud of Carly. She really manifested all of this. She had. In every way. Down to the hand-painted "Welcome to our sacred union" sign dangling from a tree. I kept telling myself to focus on the good. That this was still about us. That maybe the weirdness of the past few weeks would fall away once we stood together under the cedar arch she'd built with her dad. But that feeling shattered the second I saw him. I was grabbing water bottles from the cooler behind one of the vans when I heard a familiar voice, low, casual, slightly smug, floating through the trees. Yeah, I used to live with Evan's family. Back in the day. Wild times. I turned and there he was. Gavin. Standing like he belonged there. Laughing with two of my old college friends like they'd stayed in touch all these years. Same crooked smirk. Same cocky stance. A Patagonia vest over a long-sleeve Henley like he'd stepped out of a catalog titled Smug Outdoorsman Quarterly. I froze. My heart started hammering so hard I could feel it in my ears. For a second I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was someone who just looked like him. Then he saw me and gave me that little nod. Like we were old pals? I didn't move. My mind was racing. How the hell is he here? I told her. Before I could react, someone tapped my shoulder. I turned to see Carly's friend June, beaming like it was Christmas morning. She's ready, she said. I forced myself to breathe. My hands were clenched at my sides. I wanted to storm over, pull Carly aside, scream at her in front of everyone, but I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I walked through the gathering crowd back to the clearing. Everyone was finding their spots in the circle. Sagafire was lighting a bundle of sage, waving it dramatically around the space like she was summoning spirits. Soft music played from a wireless speaker, a recording of birds and wind chimes. Then Carly emerged from the trees. Barefoot. Hair braided with lavender sprigs. Wearing a loose white dress that moved like mist when she walked. Everyone gasped. I heard someone whisper goddess energy. She made her way to the center and met my eyes. Smiled. That same smile I used to love. But it didn't feel warm anymore. It felt like a dare. I leaned in close and whispered, he's here. Gavin. You invited him. She reached for my hand like I hadn't just said anything at all. Surprise, she whispered back. I stared at her. What the hell is wrong with you? She squeezed my fingers. Evan. Please. Just breathe. People were watching now. The officiant was already starting the opening lines, something about sacred roots and ancestral echoes. But I couldn't hear a word of it. All I could hear was the blood pounding in my head. I looked around the circle. Gavin sat 2 rows back, legs crossed, arms resting on his knees like he was at a damn TED Talk. He saw me look and lifted his eyebrows like he expected a wave. I stepped forward, cut off the officiant mid-sentence. I'm sorry, I said loudly, turning to face Carly. Can you explain why you brought someone I told you not to? Gasps. A few whispers. June's smile fell instantly. Carly blinked, still holding my hand. He needed to be here, she said, like it was obvious. You need to face this. It's a healing moment. No. You needed him to be here, I snapped. I told you, Carly, I begged you not to do this. I told you what he did. She tilted her head like I was being unreasonable. You never told me the full story, Evan. You just said there was tension. I figured this would be a chance to release that. Start fresh. I let out a laugh, loud, sharp, bitter. You don't release trauma by ambushing someone with it in front of 50 people. Carly's mouth opened, but I didn't wait. I turned, looked at the crowd, at friends, co-workers, strangers in ritual robes, and said, I'm sorry. I can't do this. And then I walked. I didn't run. I didn't yell. I just walked out of the circle, past the sage smoke, past the stunned guests, and down the path that led back toward the parking area. Behind me, someone called my name. Carly's voice. Then Caleb's. Then silence. I didn't stop. The forest swallowed the noise behind me. And the only thing I could hear now was my own breathing. Shaky. Furious. I wasn't even gone 5 minutes before I realized something for sure. This wasn't a ceremony of love. It was a setup. And I just refused to play my part. I didn't go far. Just enough to get away from the stares, the murmurs, the sick feeling building in my chest like pressure behind my eyes. I found a mossy log near the trail and sat down, hands trembling. I wasn't embarrassed. I was enraged. Not just at Carly, but at myself. For letting it get this far. For ignoring the signs, for hoping she'd change once the ceremony was over. That hope was dead now. Evan! Her voice rang out from the trees. Not frantic, not apologetic, just firm. Like she still thought this was a misunderstanding that could be resolved if I just listened. I didn't answer. She found me anyway. She walked into the clearing slowly, barefoot and calm. Like we were still in the middle of a fairy tale, and I was just a character refusing to follow the script. Can we talk? She asked. I didn't look at her. Why is he here? Carly stepped closer, her dress whispering over the ferns. Because I thought it was time. Time for what? For healing, she said. For closure. For you to let go of whatever happened. My jaw clenched. You don't even know what happened. Her expression didn't change. Then tell me. I stood up, my heart pounding. I did tell you. Not in detail, but I made it very clear. I said, do not invite Gavin. That should have been enough. She looked off to the side, like she was already rehearsing her next line. But you never explained. You just shut down every time I brought it up. That's not communication, Evan. That's fear. I took a step toward her. You want communication? Fine. Here's what happened. He sabotaged me in front of my whole team when I was 17. Lied about me. Cost me a scholarship and nearly got me kicked out of a program I worked my ass off for. Then he smiled like it didn't mean anything. That's who you invited. Carly blinked. I didn't know it was that serious. You didn't ask. I thought your parents were okay with it. My parents asked me not to press charges. That doesn't mean they were okay with it. She folded her arms. Well, they gave me his contact info. I stopped cold. Wait, what? Carly hesitated. I told them you wanted to make peace. That you were ready to reconcile. I stared at her, not fully processing the words. You lied to my parents? I had to, she said quietly. They wouldn't have given me his number otherwise. I took 2 slow steps back. You went behind my back. You lied to the people I trusted. Just so you could pull some emotional stunt at a fake wedding in the woods. Her face hardened. It's not a fake wedding. It's fake if I'm standing next to someone who doesn't respect me enough to hear no. Her voice rose. I do respect you. No, you don't. I snapped. You dressed this whole thing up like it was spiritual and pure, but it was just control. You never wanted a partnership. You wanted a stage. Carly's face twisted. Not angry, not shocked, just wounded in the way people look when their plan doesn't go exactly how they imagined. You're making this about the wrong thing, she said. This was supposed to be a chance to release the past, Evan. You're the one who's stuck. Not me. Not Gavin. I let out a cold laugh. You don't get to define my healing. You don't get to drag someone into my life like they're a surprise guest on a talk show. Her eyes narrowed. Maybe if you weren't so reactive, you could actually grow. Don't talk to me like I'm your client, I said, my voice low and steady. This isn't one of your retreats, Carly. This is my life. She didn't respond, just stood there, barefoot in the moss, blinking slowly like she couldn't quite compute that her plan had collapsed. Behind us, I heard twigs snapping, voices drifting from the ceremony space, people wondering where we went. But I didn't care anymore. I turned to walk away. Evan, she called out, her voice cracking. Don't just leave. I stopped and looked back at her one last time. You lied to my parents. You brought a man I said I never wanted to see again. You stood next to me like this was about love, when it was about control the whole time. She said nothing, just stood in the woods like a ghost in a white dress. Whatever this was, I said quietly, it's over. And then I walked away. I didn't look back. Let them sit in their circle and chant about wholeness and light. Let them pass the talking stick around and pretend they were witnessing something sacred. All I felt was betrayal. And finally, freedom. I drove until the forest turned to fields, then to silence. No music, no GPS, no destination. Just the hum of tires on asphalt and the ache in my chest growing heavier with every passing mile. It wasn't until dusk that I realized I hadn't eaten since morning. I pulled into a turnout near a lake I vaguely remembered from childhood fishing trips, shut off the engine, and just sat there, watching the orange smear of sunset fade behind the tree line. My phone buzzed once, then again. I didn't check it. I didn't have to. I knew it was her, probably Caleb too, maybe even my parents by now. I put the phone on airplane mode, leaned my seat back, and let the night take over. That first night, I slept in my car, curled up in the front seat with a jacket over my legs like a blanket. No tent, no toothbrush, no pillow. Just the shell of a man who'd nearly committed his life to someone who saw his boundaries as obstacles. The next morning, I found a rustic lodge a few miles from the lake, a family-owned place with wood-paneled walls and spotty Wi-Fi. I booked a week without thinking. When the front desk girl asked if it was for business or pleasure, I just said, "I need quiet." She nodded like she understood. And I meant it. I needed to be far from her voice, from the fake smiles and sage smudging and her stupid obsession with closure. I sat on the porch that first day and tried to process everything. Tried to stitch together the last few months into a picture that made sense. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I'd been living in someone else's narrative. A story where my trauma was just a subplot for her growth. She didn't want to understand what Gavin did. She wanted to use it. For what? To prove something? To look like the enlightened one? To control the outcome of something she never lived through? And the worst part, the part one couldn't shake, was that no one stopped her. Not Caleb, not my parents, not even me. I saw it happening, and I let it happen. I'd been trained, by years of emergency calls, by a job that demanded calm under chaos, to suppress myself. I swallowed discomfort like medicine, and Carly had learned that. She'd seen the quiet boy in me, the boy who kept the peace, the boy who gave people the benefit of the doubt because it was easier than confrontation. And she turned him into a mirror, reflecting everything she wanted to see. Now I didn't even recognize myself. By the second night, the calls had multiplied. I switched my phone on long enough to check the screen. 47 missed calls. Half from her, a handful from my mom, one from Caleb. I turned it off again. I walked, sat by the lake, stared at the water until my thoughts felt too big to carry. That was when the memory hit me again. Gavin's face that day of the competition. How he stood by while I was disqualified. How he didn't even blink when they told me I'd been marked down for negligence. He'd watched me fail with a calm that haunted me, like he'd been waiting for it. And Carly invited him like he was some kind of puzzle piece I was missing, as if I owed him something. I didn't cry, not then, but I came close when I called the lodge front desk and extended my stay to 10 days. I needed space, not just from Carly, but from the version of myself I'd become around her. The agreeable one, the flexible one, the one who let her redefine trauma as spiritual opportunity. Out here in the quiet, I was just Evan again. No ceremony, no circles, no healing chants or drumming under the moon. Just me, in an old wooden chair, staring out at a lake with nobody to impress. For the first time in weeks, I breathed without feeling like someone was watching, without someone shaping my emotions into something they could manage. It didn't feel good, not yet, but it felt real, and that was enough for now. On the fourth morning at the lodge, I turned my phone back on. The signal bars flickered to life, and with them came the flood. Texts, voicemails, missed calls. It was like opening a dam that had been pressing against my ribs all week. I scrolled, skimming subject lines, watching names flash past the screen like ghosts. The first message that stopped me came from Carly. It was long, scrolling long. The kind of text you write when you're trying too hard to sound like you're not trying at all. "Evan, I've been thinking nonstop. I know I hurt you. That was never my intention. I just wanted to do something beautiful for us. I thought the ceremony would bring peace, not pain. But I see now that I misread the moment. I'm sorry for inviting him without your consent. That was wrong. I was only trying to help you heal, because you wouldn't talk about it. I didn't know how else to reach you. I thought I was doing what was best for both of us. You shut me out. Evan, I needed to do something. I wish you'd told me everything before I had to guess. I never meant to betray you. Please don't throw away everything we've built over one misunderstanding. I still love you." I read it twice. Once as the Evan she used to talk over, and again as the Evan who'd walked away. It was a masterpiece of apology and accusation. Every sentence dripping with conditional guilt, wrapped in love like a bow. She said she was sorry, but only after blaming me for her decisions. I never told her everything? Of course I didn't, because I had learned a long time ago that vulnerability was a currency she spent freely, as long as she was the one holding the account. My fingers hovered over the screen, but I didn't reply. Not yet. A few hours later, my parents called. This time I picked up. "Evan?" My mom said, voice soft and anxious. "We didn't know." I didn't answer right away. I could hear my dad in the background, pacing, breathing heavy like he'd just come back from a walk or an argument. She told us you wanted to make amends, he said, finally cutting in. That you asked her to help you get closure. That you were finally ready. You believe that? I said flat. There was a long pause. She showed us notes, my mom said. She said she was planning something beautiful. That she'd been working so hard to help you let go. We thought. You thought what? I snapped. That I'd suddenly invite back the guy who sabotaged my life just because she decided he was spiritually redeemable? They didn't respond. You should have asked me, I said. You should have told me she was planning this. We promised her, my mom said weakly. She said it had to be a surprise. That it would only work if you didn't know ahead of time. She manipulated you, I said. My dad let out a breath. Yeah, we see that now. There it was. An admission. But it didn't make me feel better. Not really. Because even if they saw it now, they still went along with it then. I didn't yell. Didn't cry. I just went quiet. The kind of quiet that made both of them start stumbling over their words. We're sorry, son, my dad said. We thought we were helping. You weren't, I said. You were helping her. The silence on the line stretched for a full 10 seconds. Then I ended the call. That night, alone in the lodge, I sat by the fireplace with a mug of tea that had gone cold. My phone buzzed every few minutes. Another message from Carly. Another voicemail from someone I used to call family. A barrage of concern disguised as love, all of it arriving too late. Nobody had listened when I said no. But they sure had a lot to say now that I'd left. That's the part that stuck in my throat, the realization that none of them had truly heard me until I finally disappeared. Until I chose myself over the performance. Over their comfort. Over her vision. Now they were all sorry. Now they wanted to talk. Now they wished they'd done something different. I looked down at my phone. 48 unread messages. And not one of them changed what had already happened. I turned it off again. Not out of anger. But because for the first time in years I was tired of explaining myself to people who never truly listened. I waited until Thursday to go home. Carly was supposed to have cleared out by then. I'd told her via a single text, short and civil, that I'd be back after the weekend. That I needed time and space and that I expected her to respect both. She never replied. So I expected silence when I stepped through the front door. I expected the apartment to feel hollow and echoing and cold. Instead, the lights were on. There were 2 mugs in the sink, her sweater on the back of the couch, and a soft instrumental playlist humming from her phone on the counter like nothing had changed. She was sitting on the floor in the bedroom when I walked in. Cross-legged. Still barefoot. Her hair was pulled up and messy in that effortless way that used to make me pause. Now it just made me tired. You said you'd be gone, I said, not raising my voice. She looked up. Her eyes were puffy. I couldn't leave like that. Not without talking to you. You already talked, I said. Plenty. Carly stood slowly, brushing off her legs like she was shaking off something sacred. Evan. I know you're angry. I know you're hurt. But we can't just end everything over one mistake. One mistake. I said, laughing without humor. You lied to my parents. You gaslit me. You staged a reunion with the one person I begged you not to bring anywhere near my life. She stepped closer. I didn't stage anything. I truly believed it would help. You believed you would look good, I snapped. That it would be this beautiful moment of closure and everyone would look at you like you were some wise oracle who fixed the broken man. Her lips parted like she wanted to deny it, but nothing came out. I was supposed to be the emotional payoff in your healing arc, I said. Just another thing you could claim to have transformed. Her jaw clenched. That's not fair. What's not fair, I said, stepping around her toward the closet, is that you turned my trauma into your performance art. I didn't know what he did to you, she cried. You never told me the details. You never let me in. I turned sharply. I didn't owe you the details. I told you he hurt me. I told you I cut him out for a reason. That should have been enough. Carly's eyes glistened, but there was still that spark in her tone. That stubborn refusal to admit she'd done anything truly wrong. I just think, she said slowly, that if you had shared the full story, I wouldn't have made that choice. You didn't trust me. You kept secrets. My hands tightened into fists at my sides. You don't get to blame me for your betrayal, I said. You don't get to play the victim in a mess you created. She took a step back, stunned. You stood in front of 50 people, I went on, smiling like you were handing me a gift when what you gave me was a goddamn ambush. Her voice cracked. I didn't want to hurt you. But you did. I walked past her, grabbed a duffel from the closet, and started tossing her things into it, gently at first, but with growing urgency. Evan, please, she said, her voice breaking. Don't do this. Don't throw us away. There is no us, I said without looking up. You ended that in the woods. Carly sat on the edge of the bed. So what, I'm just a villain now? Is that who I am in your story? I zipped the bag shut and set it by the door. You're the person who couldn't take no for an answer, I said. That's worse than any villain. She sat there for a while, silent and shaking. I didn't offer her comfort. Eventually, she got up, gathered her phone, her charger, her journal, and walked out the door without saying goodbye. I locked it behind her. Then I went to the bedroom and sat in the middle of the floor where she'd been just an hour ago and let the silence settle over me like dust. She hadn't taken her sage bundle. She hadn't taken the little wooden box labeled Our Shared Intentions. She hadn't taken the part of me that finally remembered what it felt like to choose myself over the illusion of love. When I woke the next morning, the apartment was quiet. Still. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could finally breathe. It was a Sunday afternoon when my parents stopped by. They called first, something they didn't always do, and their voices were gentler than usual, almost apologetic. We just want to talk, my mom said. Nothing heavy. I met them on the porch with coffee already brewed. They didn't push past me. Didn't comment on the half-unpacked boxes still sitting in the hallway. My dad stood with his hands tucked into his jacket pockets like he wasn't sure what to do with himself. My mom looked like she hadn't slept much. We owe you more than an apology, she said after we sat. I didn't say anything. Just waited. Your father and we should have asked you directly. About Carly's plan. About Gavin. We should have trusted you instead of assuming the best in someone else. It's done, I said flatly. Not bitter. Just finished. My dad shifted in his chair. We're not here to defend her. We know we messed up. But there's something else. My mom pulled a folded envelope from her purse. The paper looked thick, like the kind people use when they want something to feel important. She placed it on the table between us. It's from Gavin, she said quietly. He mailed it to us. Asked us to pass it on. I stared at it like it might burn through the wood. I haven't seen him in 10 years, I said. Now suddenly everyone wants to deliver messages from him like he's earned a place at the table again? I know, she said. But we read it. And I think you should too. I didn't reach for it. Not right away. They didn't press. After a few minutes, they stood, thanked me for the coffee, and left the letter behind. I sat there for an hour before I finally picked it up. The envelope had my name on the front. No salutation. Just Evan written in block letters, neat and square. Inside was a 3-page handwritten letter. Not typed. Not scrawled. It looked like he took his time. Evan, if you're reading this, it means you didn't tear it up on sight, so thank you. I've thought about writing this for years. I never did because I figured you wouldn't want to hear from me. And maybe you still don't. That's fair. What I did to you when we were kids at the rescue trials, in school, all of it, it wasn't just messed up. It was cruel. I was angry and jealous and broken, and instead of dealing with that, I turned you into the thing I blamed. You had what I didn't, family, focus, a future. And I hated you for it. That doesn't excuse anything. It just explains the poison I carried back then. When Carly reached out, I was shocked. Thought maybe it was a trap. But when she said your parents were okay with it, I don't know. I thought maybe it was a door cracking open. I didn't go to that ceremony expecting forgiveness. Honestly, I didn't expect to even make eye contact. But seeing you again, that was sobering. You looked right through me like I was still 17 and hadn't grown a day. And maybe I hadn't. But I'm trying now. I've been in therapy for the last few years. I run a small mountain guiding business up near Bozeman. I've kept out of everyone's way, just focused on getting better. On being decent. This letter isn't to ask for friendship. Or a second chance. Just acknowledgement. I did wrong. I know it. And I'm sorry. No expectations. No pressure. Just the truth. Gavin. I read it twice. Then a third time. And I hated that it moved me. Because it did. Not in the way forgiveness movies would have you believe. I didn't feel washed clean or liberated. I felt stung. Like a fresh bruise under old skin. Because for the first time, Gavin didn't sound like the villain in my story. He sounded like someone who'd actually changed. But what do you do with that? When someone finally gives you the apology you wanted and you don't even know what you want anymore. I folded the letter and slid it back into the envelope. Set it in the drawer of the side table next to old notebooks and spare keys. I wasn't ready to respond. I didn't even know if I would. But I didn't throw it away. And that meant something. That night, I sat on the couch with the windows open, listening to the crickets. I didn't check my phone. Didn't open social media. Didn't feel the pull to share or explain or summarize. Because this moment of quiet, of honesty, of not knowing what comes next, this was mine. No more ceremonies. No more healing for show. Just space. Just truth. And finally, for the first time in a long time, Just me.